A lease arrangement that does not substantially transfer the risk and rewards incident to ownership is considered to be an operating lease. If a lessor enters into an operating lease, then how the accounting shall be carried out? Compared to the finance lease accounting, here the accounting is very simple. Whatever are your total lease receipts, we should recognize the total lease receipts as our income on straight line basis. Of course, unless and until some another systematic base is available. The point worth noting over here is that under the lease arrangement, if it is an operating lease, whatever lease rent that you are receiving, what you are receiving is not necessarily your income. Income has to be recognized on straight line basis. Of course, Ind AS 116 says that, see, if some another systematic base is available, you feel that that other systematic base is better, then you can recognize lease income on the basis of that other systematic base. But most of the times the systematic base shall be missing. In such a situation, our choice will be, we will recognize the lease income on straight line basis. Think something in this way. Let us say you are entering into an operating lease for 3 years. And the lease rent that we have agreed, right? We are telling our lessee that, see, in the first year you will have to pay 7,000, in the second year you will have to pay 3,000, and in the third year you have to pay 2,000. So it is a 3-year lease arrangement, and these are the lease rents that we have spelled out. Now in the first year, as a lessor, you will receive 7,000. You will receive 7,000, but that does not mean 7,000 is your income. You cannot credit 7,000 to the profit and loss account. What Ind AS 116 says is that, see, first find out what will be your total lease receipts. If I take a total over here, my total lease receipts is turning out to be 12,000. This 12,000 should be recognized as an income over the lease term on SLM basis, on straight line basis. So 12,000 I will divide by 3. Okay, 12,000 I'll divide by 3. So every year the income that will be recognized will be 4,000. So 4,000 rupees of income will be recognized as operating lease income. So all that we have to understand is that although you are receiving 7,000, but 7,000 will not be credited to the P&L. In the second year, you are receiving 3,000, but 3,000 will not be credited to the P&L. Similarly, 2,000 will not be credited to the P&L. What will be credited to the P&L is the income, and the income from operating lease over here shall be 4,000. You only think in this way. See, let us say you are proposing this deal. You may wonder why straight line method. You are proposing this deal to the lessee. Think in this way. You are proposing the deal to the lessee. You are telling the lessee that, see, in the first year you have to pay 7,000 lease rent. It's quite possible that the lessee is a little bit surprised. 7,000, but then we say in second year 3,000, and in the third year only 2,000. Think in this way. The lessee will definitely find 7,000 in the first year to be a steep lease rent. But how will the lessee look at the whole thing? Lessee will think in this way that, see, in the first year agreed I'll have to pay a higher amount of 7,000, but then my lease rent is declining. Any rational person will think in this way, that although I'm paying 7,000 in the first year, but what is the total that I'm paying in 3 years? The lessee will think in this way, that the total that I'm paying in 3 years is 12,000, and it is a lease agreement for 3 years. So on an average, this lease is costing me 4,000. Think in this way, isn't it? A rational person will think in this way. A rational person will not be surprised at the first year lease rent. The rational person will think that overall, what is my expense? Overall, my expense will be 4,000. That same thing we are seeing from the viewpoint of the lessor over here. Agreed, you will charge 7,000 in the first year, but you have to see the entire lease arrangement as a whole. And when I see all the 3 years together, I realize that you are not earning an income of 7,000. When all the 3 years are considered, you are earning on an average only 4,000 rupees. So 4,000 is what will be recognized as an income following the SLM basis. Unless until, as I said, some another systematic base is available. So if the lessor is able to work out some another systematic base, you may use that particular base, and on the basis of that, you may recognize the income. So if you really check with the requirement of Ind AS 116, it says that you should recognize lease receipts as an income on straight line basis, even if the payments are not on that basis. We had seen that, no? It is 7,000, 3,000, 2,000. They are not on straight line basis, but still we will recognize income on straight line basis. We have to do this over the lease term unless another systematic base is available. If you are able to work out some another systematic base and you feel that it is apt in the given situation, you are allowed to follow that other systematic base. Also, for obtaining an operating lease, you may incur some initial direct costs. If you are incurring any initial direct costs, then they will be added to the carrying amount of the underlying asset at the lease commencement, and such cost shall be recognized as an expense over the lease term on the same basis as lease income. In other words, any initial direct expenses that you have incurred, that will also be recognized as an expense on straight line basis. Actually, they can also be deducted from the total lease receipts, and then whatever is the residual figure, that is what can be recognized as an income. Asset is in your books, so you'll have to provide for depreciation. So follow the requirements of Ind AS 16. If it is an intangible asset, follow the requirements of Ind AS 38. And there can be a possibility of impairment. If there is an impairment, then follow Ind AS 36. We have one simple question over here. Let's discuss that. It says, a lessor agrees to bear relocation cost of lessee of ₹1,000. Lease rent agreed is 2,000 per annum for 10 years. Considering the lease to be an operating lease, how shall the lease income be recognized in the books of the lessor? Okay. We know that we have to recognize the lease income on SLM basis. You have agreed 2,000 rupees, so I multiply that by 10 years. So the total amount that you are going to receive is 20,000. You are bearing, right? Lessor is bearing 1,000 rupees of cost. So this initial direct cost can be deducted. So I'll get 19,000. And the lease tenure is 10 years. So I'll divide this by 10. So every year the lease income that we can recognize is 1,900. So 1,900 should be credited to the profit and loss account each year. Answer is already given in our books, and we have just discussed that how we are getting that 1,900 over here. One more to wrap up this particular discussion. It says, a lessor agrees to a rent-free period of first 3 years of operating lease term of 20 years. Lease rent agreed is 5,000 per annum from year 4 to 20. How shall the lease income be recognized in the books of the lessor? Okay. We have agreed 5,000 as the lease rent. Total lease tenure is 20 years. For 3 years, we will not charge anything. So that leaves us with 17 years. So 5,000 should be multiplied by 17 years. So that is turning out to be 85,000. And this 85,000 should be recognized over the lease term. Lease term is 20 years. Over the lease term on straight line basis. That works out to 4,250. So every year 4,250 should be recognized. Here's the answer, right? I have just discussed with you the base by which we calculated 4,250.